Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Welcome to the Blazers Edge podcast, part of the Almighty Baller Radio Network. This is the Ebb and Flow edition of the weekly podcast. How are you doing, Dan?
Ebb and Flow. I found, I need to change the intro music to like some EDM or something.
in the exit interviews, which we're going to talk about later, like I think half of the people talked about the ebb and flow of the season. So I thought we should have the ebb and flow edition of the podcast. Do you want to be ebb or do you want to be flow?
Oh, I'm definitely not flowing right now.
Okay,
I'm all about the ebb.
You're Ebb and I'm Flo, and we're ebbing and flowing through this edition of the Blazers Edge podcast.
You're
just
like
we
Flo from Progressive.
Flowed. I am so not like Flo from Progressive, Dan. I am disappointed that after having done this together for a season, that is who you're going to compare me to.
Ebb and Flow sounds like a really bad buddy cop movie.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's gonna be a long off season apparently, so we can really explore this.
Ebb is the wild, loud mouth. Flo,
yeah, and I'm gonna be the free spirited. Yeah, and I'm the free spirited, the free spirited one who just wants to have a good time, and you're all by the book.
Are you Danny Glover here? Are you getting too old for this?
No, that's your role. We definitely need to workshop this more before we go into it. But let's go ahead and face what we need to face, which is the fact that the Portland Trailblazers season is over.
Dun, 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 dun.
They were unceremoniously swept in the first round of the playoffs.
Unceremoniously? I don't know. That was a pretty ceremonial butt kicking.
In any case, it was not good. It was a very quick 4 games, and I have to confess, I was at the party that a friend of the show, Neela Madison, from also on Twitter, she hosted a party, and so I went with all these energetic young people to watch this game, and I just kept thinking, no matter what happens, it's all going to be over by 5.
You know what I notice here? There's a trend.
What's that?
You were a participant in a party or a game in all but one of these. So I can't blame you totally for all the losses. Because you were in mid-flight for game 1.
Right. Oh, you mean because I wasn't, I wasn't like in my regular spot attending to the game like I should have been?
Yep.
Yeah, I kind of think the problem is bigger than me. I would like to think that I have that kind of an influence on the team, but I kind of don't think that I do.
You would love to have that influence, wouldn't you?
I would just have to like to have a tiny little bit of influence on anything, really. So let's talk about. I don't want to talk about all of the games because that could just be kind of just
no.
A
neither
sad
do I, because I had to do the post game for all of them, and that was miserable.
And you handled it admirably. The ones that I watched, you handled admirably.
Tara, I played crickets. I played crickets over the top of the Blazers' non-existent highlights. Like, I don't want to relive those games any more than I have to.
Well, I want to talk about Game 4 because really all I wanted going to Game 4 is I just wanted some signs of life because I just really felt like they didn't look like they were enjoying themselves. It looked like they'd forgotten completely why they were playing basketball. By the end of Game 3, I couldn't even imagine that these guys had devoted a huge portion of their life to the game of basketball because they just looked so defeated. So for Game 4, I just wanted to see them go out there and try and play hard and show a little bit of, why they had, like I said, devoted their life to playing this game. And I felt like that game, more than any of them, they had at least they were scoring. At least they had their offense back.
All I can think right now is like Tara Bowen-Biggs. She just wants people to be good at what they dedicate their life to, and they weren't.
Wait, how is me wanting people to be good at what they dedicate their life to any different than your whole excellence thing?
No. I mean, I don't know. From
that
you,
was weak, Dan.
It just sounds so much more sour coming from you. From me, they expect it. From you, that's like infinite shade.
Oh, I got lots of degrees of shade that I could throw. We're going to talk about more about shade being thrown later.
Oh yeah.
What did you think about the last game? Did you think the last game showed any more heart than the other 3 games of the series did?
No,
not at all.
The score was closer, but I mean, the one theme that was just so prevalent the entire series was the Pelicans. Anytime there was momentum, had a momentum-breaking basket, and it wasn't like this beautiful brand of basketball where they're swinging it left, right, side to side, up, down, kicking it out, and finding the open shooter at the end of the shot clock to hit a massive shot. It was pushing pace ever so slightly, make or miss, driving the lane and either beating their defender one-on-one with little to no resistance or getting a little bit of resistance and making one pass for a dunk, a layup, or a 3. Rinse, repeat. I can't count. No, actually, I could, and I'm going to. I'm going to go ahead.
Don't.
No, I am.
Let's not relive it right now.
No, I haven't done it yet. This is part of one of my pieces that I'm writing up when I get back to writing again for the summer. The amount of plays that the Pelicans had where they utilized 1 or less passes to score. And I have a feeling that it's going to be really high.
So that's interesting because we've talked on this podcast before about the Trailblazers' low number of assists. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember how much we actually went into whether or not low number of assists meant low numbers of passes.
No, it's not. There's no correlation. Eric Griffith has charted this numerous times now, and there's no direct correlation between number of passes and assists in generating shots. The difference that I said, at least between Drew Holiday and Rajon Rondo and Dame and CJ, is Dame and CJ pass to a player. Drew, and especially Rondo, pass a player open. Like
wait, what do you mean pass a player open?
With Rondo in particular, when Rondo hits a guy, it's a lob at the rim or a behind-the-back bounce pass on the baseline when he's drawn 2 defenders. And all the guy has to do is catch it and dunk. Or catch it and shoot, and it's always in the perfect spot.
You mean he passes it to space that someone's running into, as opposed to passing it to their hands?
Yeah,
is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's part of it.
So they pass it to space.
Not only that, but like when they do kick it out, it's right in the pocket. Steve Nash was famous for this. I don't want to say famous for this. Famous in the NBA circles. When a new player would come to the Suns, he would bring the said player aside and ask him where he really wanted the ball. Is it to the left? Is it to the right? Is it to the middle? Is it down a little lower? Is it up a little higher? Where is the best place for me to put the ball for you to have the most likely chance to succeed? And Rondo, whether you hate him, love him, or ambivalent to him, he's the same way. He puts the ball in that position time after time after time. And for Anthony Davis, it's a very big window to put that ball in, as we all saw. I mean, he had alley-oop dunk after alley-oop dunk after alley-oop dunk that I never thought was possible. Like where Rondo was putting the ball and where Anthony Davis was going and getting it. And that's a testament to Rondo's passing ability, but just the lethal weapon that Anthony Davis is and was in the series.
Wait, so you're saying that Dame and CJ do not pass the ball in that same way? No,
they don't. And it's not a shot at them. It's just it's a different level of playmaking. And I also think that's partly due to the personnel. How many guys on this Portland team are going to go get a lob for you? How many guys are cutting backdoor regularly? And able to.
We had Mo back for a game, 2 games. How many games did Mo play? Just 1 game, right?
I mean, he played 2 games. Game 1 and 2.
He played 2.
Or, excuse me, game 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
Yeah.
Right.
And you saw a little bit of that. But Mo's the closest thing they have to that. I mean, I was watching the Wizards Raptors series today, and I saw John Wall throw a lob to Bradley Beal. It was beautiful. You're not going to see Dame throwing lobs to CJ down the middle in traffic. It's just not their game.
So are you saying my dream of lobs and alley-oops is just going to die a quiet death here with this lineup?
As this team is currently constructed, yes. The closest thing they have to that right now is probably Zach Collins.
Mm-hmm.
And Zach is more perimeter-oriented right now than anything else.
All right. Well, I'll pin a little bit of hope on that young one. He's young. He can learn how to do. He can do all that stuff. What would you say, Dan, to people who think that it was Damian Lillard who just flamed out in this series?
Okay, they were going to take this one kind of piece by piece because this one literally was driving me batty at the end of Game 4. I saw how many people... There was people saying that Damian Lillard didn't have any heart, didn't make any adjustments, couldn't beat Jrue Holiday one-on-one, couldn't beat him off the bounce, couldn't beat him off the dribble, couldn't do this, that, or the other. And it's just so unequivocally wrong. Like, it's hard for me to fathom that take. I get people who are frustrated. I get people who are irritated. I get the result was ugly, and the way Portland looked and performed and the product that was on the court was just heinous.
So what was happening then?
Damian Lillard was getting double covered on almost every single possession. And the two guys that were doing most of the coverage are potential first-team all-defense guys in Jrue Holiday and Anthony Davis. That alone is more attention and coverage than almost any player in the NBA will receive. I heard somebody say, or somebody responded to something I said about this exact same issue. Do you think Steph Curry would react to that? He beats traps all the time. There's one thing to beat a trap. There's another thing to beat a trap and then beat the third guy and then beat the fourth guy. And that's what the Pelicans were doing. There were four guys almost at all times. Alvin Gentry is almost famous, notorious for this. And we talked about it going into the playoffs. What did I say about Alvin Gentry? He's a giant troll who will find something that works and dig at it and dig at it and dig at it until you find a way around it. If anything, he'll double down on it. It's what he did to LaMarcus Aldridge. You don't know how to handle a double team from the backside, from the baseline, from the three-point line, digging down? Guess what? I'm going to do it all series long unless you find a counter for it. The Blazers tried to find a counter for Damian Lillard. It was the role players taking and making shots. Al-Farouq Aminu had probably the best series of anybody, and the Pelicans just didn't care. They were perfectly okay with Al-Farouq Aminu beating them because Al-Farouq Aminu is taking shots and making shots, and that's kind of how it goes.
Right. You know how I feel about Al-Farouq. And watching that Game 4 as he scored 27 points, had 6 rebounds. He was 11 of 20 from the field, 5 of 11 from 3. I was watching it, and I kept saying to whoever was standing next to me, I kept saying, is this because they're leaving him completely alone? Or is this because he's having a really good game? And I was hoping that it's a little bit of both because they were throwing nominal pressure at him, but he wasn't even just doing threes. He was like going inside more than
he had the
I've
pump
seen
fake
him
and drive
do a
dunk
lot
on the baseline in Game 4. That was a thing of beauty. He also had some what I call the create your own adventure books of dribbling in the open
Embrace
court.
the chaos, Dan.
Oh, God,
Embrace the chaos.
Scared the crap out of me a couple times. It was one of those things where you're just like, please, God, no, don't do that. But I mean, those
know why
moments
you
were few and
haven't
far
just
between.
embraced that.
They were far and few between. Aminu was probably the best player in this series, and yes, CJ had a breakout game in Game 4. Obviously, 38 points and 22 shots is a good night. But Aminu scored 7 points in Game 1, 14 points in Game 2, 21 points in Game 3, and 27 in Game 4. So obviously the plan was let Al-Farouq Aminu beat us. And to his credit, he did his best. Yeah, and he was drawing a defensive assignment that was either Anthony Davis or Jrue Holiday. The dude didn't get possession off.
He's doing it all while trying to defend those two. You mean?
Yeah, I mean he did not get a single possession off. That's just he didn't have any opportunity to do anything at all other than that. And for him to be as successful as he was, that was, if you're looking for a lone bright spot, that was the one that I pulled out of this. It was
well. If you would like, I welcome you to join the Al-Farouq Aminu Appreciation Society. I will always be the queen, but if you would like to become a member, I would welcome you.
Does
I think
the president
all
have
year,
more power than a queen? I'm not sure how the monarchy
there
versus
is no
republic
president.
works.
There's just me.
So,
and I really want somebody else to join me because I think he deserves more credit. Okay, I have 2 more questions about the series. Second to last questions. So in this series overall, you talked about some of the people, we talked about people blaming Damian Lillard for it or whatever.
Crazy.
There's a lot of blame being thrown around about this. How do you think the blame should be divvied up between the matchup, the coaching, or the players' performance themselves? Because I know you're going to say the answer is a little bit of everything, probably.
It is.
So how would you divide it up between those two? That's the matchup, the coaching, and the players. How would you divide up the blame?
I put it mostly on the players. Mm-hmm. Coaches don't have any impact on taking and making shots or playing defense. There were times where the defensive effort was so bad, I thought we were watching a team from December. Like they were.
You mean last December? Because this December, it wasn't as bad as it's been.
They're undefeated in this December.
No, you know what I mean.
2018. Get it?
From the previous season.
But I mean, they were bad. They were bad in so many ways defensively. Like I said, the one pass and open shots were just so regular. It was. It was bad.
So Damian gets a pass, but all the rest of them
Dame gets some.
Because you just said that Damian, it wasn't Damian because he was being triple teamed.
No, I think here's the deal. I don't think he gets as a heavy burden of the blame because he was facing so much pressure. But I think he did make some bad choices when he did recognize the pressure was coming and what he was going to do with the ball. Then I think he held on to it sometimes for too long. I think he tried to force some shots to try to make something happen at that point. Just out of desperation because he is the guy. But, CJ.
So matching and coaching are your other choices. So, do you think it was 50% the players, 25% each of the other two?
That's probably.
Was it 10% coaching?
I really don't put a lot on.
I'm going to make you do math. Dan.
No,
I know you just had a.
I'm there. I don't put a lot on Stotts.
Mm-hmm.
I think he had these guys ready to go as far as game plan wise.
It just feels like over 4 games they could have figured some part of it out.
How do you figure out Anthony Davis?
I don't know, but
that's the thing.
I guess we'll see what happens in the other series.
Listen, even if the Warriors trounce the Pelicans. The Warriors can trounce anyone if they get Steph back. That's not a barometer. That's not a measuring stick for me. They will beat the brakes off of everybody. I'd be interested to see
how they do it.
Here's the thing, and this kind of goes back to the idea of what happens if you double team or triple team Steph Curry. Well, if the Warriors throw a bunch of bodies,
they still have Kevin Durant and
Klay Thompson and Iguodala and Livingston. Draymond
Green.
Yeah, you have this just running tally of talent that can make plays. And now the Pelicans may be on the other side of that in this next series where I don't think you're going to see Kevin Durant on AD for long stretches. I think it'll be more Draymond, and that'll be a heck of a test for him because he's given up a lot of size height-wise, but length-wise he makes it up with his wingspan and his defensive instincts. But Anthony Davis is a problem for everybody in the league. And here's the flip side of that. The Warriors also have Klay Thompson if they want to put on Jrue Holiday. They've got a 6'8" guy who's a great defender.
Yeah.
And then they can throw Sean Livingston on him, and then they can throw Iguodala on him. Yeah, they've got 3 6'8" guys that can throw at Jrue Holiday, where he can't just bully those guys around. Rondo, I think Steph gets a lot of shtick for subpar defensive play, but I don't think Rondo's going to dice them up the same way that they did Portland. That's the roster itself. And I think that's more indicative than the coaching is the roster itself. Now, the matchup is a problem because this is something you and I have talked about a million times. The Pelicans have one thing the Blazers can't counter: size, length, and athleticism. AD is the freakiest of freaks. He's right up there with Giannis as far as the most physically gifted players in the league. He's 7 foot tall and he plays like a guard. He's inside, he's outside, he's long, he's athletic, he's mobile. His verticality is through the roof. His timing and his instincts are supernatural. And then you've got Drew Holiday, who's 6'5" and got a 7 foot wingspan. He's a tenacious defender. I think people have slept on both Drew and AD for a while now, for kind of the same reasons. With AD,
because they haven't done anything up until this year.
Not just that, but it's because of I think outlying circumstances like injury in AD's case, or family and injury in Drew Holiday's case. I mean, Drew Holiday, it's not like he just became an all-world defensive player. He's been that guy. But he's been injured.
So the timing has been off for that pair.
Yeah.
And now they've come together and they've had the whole year to get it right this time.
Exactly.
And now they're ready. Does it make you more likely to root for them because they beat the Trailblazers?
No, I want a Utah-Indiana series so the NBA loses. I want the worst rating possible now. Also,
it's because you want to watch Donovan Mitchell and Victor Oladipo.
This is very true.
We're not going to talk about Donovan Mitchell. So
Too
we're
late.
going to move on to my last question about this series. Is there anything? Actually, I'm going to tell you first what I think they can build on from this, and then if you have anything to add, I invite you to add.
I mean, you can build on top of Ash, Tara. I mean, you slash and burn the fields for a reason.
Okay, hush. I already talked about Aminu. I already talked about it was how when the plan was that everybody else has to beat us, Aminu totally stepped up and did everything that he could. I think Ed was, for the most part, solid. And there were moments where Nurk played up to his potential. I still don't think we've seen anywhere near his ceiling, but we saw more. We saw a little bit more fight out of him in Game 4. But what I really loved out of Game 4 is I loved when Collins shoved Rondo. That was the best. I loved that. I mean, how annoying of Rondo to go and smack the ball out of Collins' hand. And, we don't want somebody who's just going to sit back there and take it, do we, Dan?
No.
Come on.
But
that was fun.
The foul before that was so stupid by Collins. It was just like, what are you doing, dude? And that's not just me. That pretty much everybody that was watching that game had the same reaction on Twitter at the same time. Like the whole Rondo thing, nobody I think really anybody had an issue with. But of what came before it and that foul and giving the Pelicans 2 free throws was like 0.7 on the clock in that position was just such a boneheaded move. But yeah, it was nice.
Well,
it was nice to
him
see some
shoving
fight from
Rondo
him.
because I loved Rondo having to look arch his neck back as far as he could to look up as far as he could just to see Zach Collins, because Zach Collins was towering over him.
Rondo's crazy though.
Rondo maybe saw a little bit of his mortality in there.
I don't.
You know what I thought?
That.
This is what I think happened. You know the famous story about Rondo being at the Boys and Girls Club and all the kids coming up and playing Connect Four and him destroying them, and then one kid came up and won, and then Rondo made him play him again, and he beat him 5 times in a row. I think Collins was one of those kids in the Boys and Girls Club that day, and this was him just coming and being like, not today, Rondo, not today.
Yeah.
That's what I think happened.
Rondo's the kind of guy who
I think I have a lot more fun watching games than you do, Dan.
No.
I have a very rich fantasy life in these games.
I look at Collins and it's just, I suppose that Casey Haldall is Collins is the kind of guy when he snaps, you can see the whites of his eyes. And I'm like, yes, I'm sure Zach Collins strikes the fear of God in people all across the NBA landscape. No, nobody's afraid of the 19, 20-year-old kid he's from Las Vegas. I'm like, he went to Bishop Gorman. He went to one of the most elite private schools in the country and then went to Gonzaga. That is not a tough guy. You want to talk about tough guys?
Okay.
But
we're going to stop here and move on.
We're going to talk about tough guys real quick.
No, I didn't say I wanted to talk about tough guys. I wanted to talk about I wanted to talk about a moment that I liked out of Game 4 and out of this thing.
Andre Miller is a tough guy.
You're not going to try to throw Andre Miller at me to try and knock down Zach Collins a notch. That is not happening. I see what you're trying to do.
It's not
you're
believable. You're
going to try to get me all distracted by Andre Miller.
It's not
because you know I love Andre Miller.
Who doesn't?
So I could be like, oh yeah, that was 52-year-old Andre Miller was tougher than 18-year-old Zach Collins. Yes, he was, Dan. Did you get what you wanted?
No, listen. Like I said, I like the fact that Collins showed some fight in him, but like everybody was like, oh yeah, Zach will get him. I'm just like, Rondo's the kind of guy who's legit crazy. He's the kind of guy like waits for you in the alley after the game.
Right, and Collins wasn't afraid of him.
I wasn't afraid or wasn't aware.
Yes, Tara, you're right. Let's move on.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so speaking of going away, today was the Blazers' exit interviews. They wasted absolutely no time in getting to. What did they start by 10 o'clock the day after? I mean, they had to fly back home.
Yeah, I know. I mean, did they just dip out of New Orleans like instantly? Just like walk on the bus in uniform?
Yeah, I think so. I think they just went
like a high school team. You don't even go to the showers. You just walk to the bus for that really long away game. You're like, I just want to get home.
I was just so grateful that it was over so early. I was so happy. I was just like, oh, I got the whole night ahead of me to just do a million other things and just get this out of my mind. But so they did have the exit interviews today. I watched most of them. I actually didn't watch all of them. But a couple things stood out for me, and I'm wondering if you noticed any of these. I thought so. Starting with Wade Baldwin, I watched his. He talked about how the year had a rough start for him.
Been a wild ride for Wade.
Yeah, and he was just glad that he made the floor, and he was glad that he wasn't sure if he was going to get 2 minutes or 20 minutes, and he was glad that he made it. One of the things I thought was really interesting is he seemed really nervous in that interview. And maybe it's just because he hasn't been around the team as much, and he probably has barely even spoken to most of the reporters there. But, I think I watched his right after I watched Zach Collins. And for a 19-year-old, I thought he grew a lot in his ability to, give at least somewhat interesting interview, basically when everybody's saying exactly the same thing.
Zach was really
I thought he did a good job.
To be honest.
Yeah, and go ahead. Continue.
Sean Eichen asked him about whether or not he thought he wanted to prep to be the starter next year. And I thought it was a great question from Sean. But also, Zach gave a great answer and didn't necessarily, quote unquote, take the bait. He gave a very professional answer. Like, I'm just going to work on my game. What happens, happens. And
he said, I'm not sure what my role is next year. I'm just going to work on my game.
And he wasn't fazed by it. He wasn't shocked by it. Nothing really caught him off guard with it. And that part of it was pretty impressive because you don't expect the young fella to have the right answer. Like, not just Zach, but just kind of rookies in general. But he played that off like a pro. I was actually really impressed with that.
Nice. So, in the world that just didn't open up and swallow you, Shabazz, I thought his was tough to watch, because I felt like the end of the year was pretty disappointing to him because he lost minutes to Wade Baldwin, and I thought his answer was the best when they asked him, how he felt, and he said unaccomplished. I thought, wow, that is a perfect one-word answer for the looks on everybody's faces. He just kind of looked haunted to me. I don't know. I was projecting a lot of emotions onto these guys, so
no.
I'm sure. I know, shocking, isn't it? But so Pat Connaughton, he was super peppy and upbeat. Did you remember anything that he said?
Pat was kind of canned answers for the most part. He was good, and he did make a little joke about continuing to play basketball. However, there could be a professional baseball team coming to Portland.
Portland might be getting a team.
Other than that, Pat just kind of went through the motions, kind of what you'd expect.
Yeah. Well, he was very chipper, and not everybody was chipper. I watched him in just kind of like a random order, and I think I watched him in between Shabazz and Myers, and so his stood out as pretty peppy. But I also thought it was interesting. Shabazz was the only one who played every game, or not Shabazz. Pat Connaughton was the only player who played every game this year. Huh. I thought that was interesting.
That's a little surprising.
Yeah, CJ
only played
81.
81. Yeah.
Yeah. So Pat was the Iron Man this year. Myers that was tough, man. It's so hard to watch him talk because he is so careful about speaking carefully, not setting himself up for anything, walking the party line, not upsetting anyone. But you could tell he just has things he really wants to say. And he talked about, like, considering how much I played, I think I did well with the minutes that I got, with the opportunities that I did have. And, like, all the underlying thing was, but I hardly got to get in there at all. It was, I don't know. What did you, I know as someone who's as fond of Myers as you are, did you take anything from his exit interview?
Not necessarily from Myers, but from his teammates. It seemed like all of his teammates wanted to point out the fact that, like, even though he didn't get on the court, he mattered to them. I want to say almost every interview I listened to, they mentioned him. And it was always like, and even Myers, because they know how he's perceived. And they all wanted to kind of shout him out. So I thought that was kind of cool. Myers is unequivocally the best interview in Portland. Like, everybody will say Evan Turner, but that's for entertainment. Like, for in-depth, deep answers that Myers will go out of his way to address for you, he's the best. And it was kind of the same from him.
I actually thought Evan Turner had one of the most direct
when Stotts basically told him not to get fat.
No, that was funny. Let's see. Let me find it, because it was well said, and I don't want to say it wrong. It was not that, but I didn't remember that he came into camp overweight, but apparently he did last year. Turner was talking about, I think, ways to improve the team, because everybody wanted to know what the players thought about ways to improve the team. And I'm just about there calling it up right now. What's the team missing? He said, I think in certain standpoints we have to be more consistent. He said, I think one thing that may help as well, and there's no jabs or anything at anybody, but building an identity outside of our two strong scorers. They're terrific offensively. Sometimes in our darker days and in our darker moments, we sometimes go downhill when a team fully focuses a lot of attention on our stars.
Well, be better, Evan.
Well, I
hate to be a jerk, but that's
himself.
But I mean, it's not just him. There's a reason why the offense is built around Damian CJ.
Yeah.
Like, nobody else is consistent. I mean, do we have to go back and look at Evan Turner's performance in Game 2?
Well, I don't think it's just Evan Turner.
No. I mean, or Game 3, I think it was. But the consistency, the reason why Damian and CJ are relied upon so much is because they're consistent. If there were guys that were more consistent, I think and with Stotts, it's looked around as the league as an equal opportunity offense. I mean, the opportunity's there. It's up to them to take it, and if they can't capitalize on it, like, are you supposed to game plan for more Evan Turner mid-post post-ups?
I didn't take it the same way you did. I don't quite understand why you how
it sounds
this
a lot like
Harkless.
No, it sounds a lot like Harkless in December.
I think he's talking about the whole team needs to have an identity. Like, we need to be more than Dame and CJ. And I think that could mean, different players or the same players playing better. I don't know. Everybody else didn't have an answer when I'm saying it was what I'm saying when they were talking about what's wrong with the team. CJ was just like, I don't know what's missing. Like, really? That's
I mean, Evan Turner's answer is the same answer that people have been saying for the last couple of years.
But he's the one who said it in the interviews.
Okay, I mean, again, like, I like ET as a dude, but part of the reason that Portland struggles is because of his limitations, and because of Harkless's limitations, and because of Aminu's limitations, and because of Damian CJ's defensive liability. I mean, like,
I don't disagree with any of that. I'm just saying he's the one who called it out today in the exit interviews.
No. I mean, and bravo to him for doing it. But I think that's kind of a look in the mirror situation. Like, if you're looking at the Warriors, or if you're looking at the Rockets, do you think they're looking at their team right now and wondering what's their identity? Do you think the role players are doing that? No, they're talking about their star players. And their identity is built around all the things that they can do. I mean, it's great that Evan called it out, but I mean, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, duh.
Well, he's the one who said it. So I was just glad that somebody said it. My other favorite quote, and then I want to know what your favorite parts or what the things that stood out to you most about the exit interviews were Ed Davis. The reporters really, in my opinion, address Ed Davis as a sage. Like, he's the wise man. Mm-hmm. And I know that's kind of like his role on the team, is that a lot of people go to him for deeper information, more background. They trust what he's going to say. They know he's going to give them a thoughtful answer. And he had a lot to say about why he wanted to stay in Portland. But then they asked him, started asking him GM questions. They were like, if you were the GM, and he was like, I'm not the GM, and I'm not getting paid to answer that kind of question. And so they were like, but if you were, what would you do about Nurkic or whatever? And he said, right now, I'm trying to focus on the Davis household. He was like, I'm not looking at somebody else's household. I'm trying to focus on the Davis household. And I thought that was a great answer.
I got twins, man. I ain't got time for this.
Yeah. So I'm focusing on the Davis household. I thought that was a great answer. That's going to be when I'm busy and people are trying to bug me these days, I'm going to be like, I'm focusing on the Davis household. Only I'm not really focusing on his household because that would be creepy. I'm focusing on my own household. I just liked his answer.
You're not,
so what about the exit interviews stood out for you?
You can't backpedal far enough away from that, Tara.
What about the exit interviews stood out for you?
Among the players, the one weird one, not necessarily even weird, different. CJ McCollum was talking about how the team itself over the last couple of years has tested for food allergies and food sensitivities. And I'm sure that's to help them with their diet. But CJ said he's going to talk to his agent, and he's got a doctor that he wants him to meet with, I think in L.A., that is going to run a different series of tests on him to help him with it. And as we were talking about before the show, you noticed, or it appears that CJ's dealing with some allergies. Right. It's no secret that Oregon is home to some of the worst allergy seasons in the country. And if he can find a way to better manage that through food or diet or lifestyle, whatever it is, it's probably a good thing to do. He also mentioned that he normally doesn't start his diet until later in the summer for the season, but this year he's probably going to try to focus it down a little bit more and start a little bit sooner. CJ's not the kind of guy I think of as like that really needs strong, body maintenance. He's the kind of guy that takes good care of himself, clearly. He's led the league or been, near the top of the league in distance traveled every single year he's been a starter.
Yeah.
Here's a random crazy stat. For the last 5 years, or every year that the distance travel metric has been tracked by Synergy, a Blazer has led in that category.
Really?
Yes.
So who else besides CJ?
Nick Batum.
Oh.
So, Yep. The Blazers
Interesting.
Always have one guy who's basically a marathon runner, just constantly on the move.
Well, it makes sense maybe for CJ to start. Because last year was really the year that Damian started, paying really close attention to his diet. Maybe that's just what happens when you turn 26, right? You just that's what you do. You say, okay, I did all these other things to make myself better. Now I'm going to try to work on these things. But I've noticed him for a couple of years now, and he's brought it up in other interviews before, about having allergies and I was noticing in this interview and in interviews in earlier part of this playoff series, him rubbing his eyes and touching his eyes and rubbing his nose like his nose is running. And I just got to thinking, if he's got allergies, it would just be it would just be a pain if you're trying to be peak performer and, you just can't shake this. And I just know they're like you said, it's a rough part of the country for that. So maybe he'll discover some stuff that will help him out and maybe help him feel stronger for more of the season next year and make a difference in that way. Yeah. Or at least not getting so tired with his running. But the players weren't the only people who talked today. We heard from Neil Olshey and very briefly from Terry Stotts, who sat next to Olshey for the entire 26 minutes and only answered. He had 2 quick questions. But yeah, so Olshey said some stuff. I'll start with what I had issue with, because he threw some shade at Al-Farouq Aminu, and that is not okay with me. As the queen of the Al-Farouq Aminu Appreciation Society, Olshey was talking about how, teams improve in a variety of ways. Sometimes it's players stepping up, and he said, who would have thought that Al-Farouq Aminu would be shooting near 40% from the three for most of the thing? And I thought, why are you saying that about Al-Farouq Aminu? First of all, I thought that he would shoot I'm not surprised that he shot near 40%. And also, isn't Olshey the person who drafted him and then signed him?
For another team.
Why is he out there saying this about? Why is he picking on Al-Farouq? I don't understand. That was completely baffling to me.
Olshey got really defensive about basically every move he's ever made. Seriously, and like every move that because every person that's on Portland's roster right now is tied to Olshey, up and down. There's not a single player here that does not have Olshey's hand on it. Mm-hmm. That's pretty remarkable when you think about it. So he's entirely responsible for the roster construction, which means he's entirely responsible for the product that's put on the floor night in and night out. And after getting swept and in the manner that they did, that's basically like going into, I don't know, this is probably a bad analogy, but like going into the Olympics as a medal contender and not even finishing your event, like not even qualifying for the final.
Like not even making it, qualifying in the heats.
Yeah, that's the closest analogy that I can come up with. Like, how are you going to if all the pomp and circumstances built up around you and what you're going to do, and then you fall out of the blocks? Like, how are you going to react? Are you just going to be like, no, we screwed up? No, your natural, I think, human instinct is to get defensive. And that was the theme of the entire press conference. Every time somebody called him on something, it was like, well, come on. No, that's not how it is. And there were a couple exchanges he had with Joe Freeman where Joe asked a fair question, and his actual response was, come on, Joe. Like, how dare you ask that?
And it was just Joe that he kept calling by name, too, which I thought was strange.
Which is... That's a whole nother subject, but yeah, the entirety of the interview was really uneasy. Obviously, part of that I think was having Stotts there, and the other. I want to get into this one because this one it's not directed at me personally, but it felt like it was. But they asked him about the possible need for sweeping changes. And he said nobody was talking about making sweeping changes 10 days ago. And I wanted to put my face through a wall.
Who hasn't been talking about sweeping changes?
I put it on Twitter. I'm like, I was asking for sweeping changes 10 days ago, but I was also asking for them 3 years ago. But whatever, no big deal. Like, it's such a disingenuous and just intellectually dishonest statement that it was physically painful to hear come out of his mouth. Like, that's not true, but I get that it's his job to defend the roster construction, to build the team, to build the brand, to identify, what this team needs and to sell this team going forward. But just to do it so bold-faced like that was just a smack in the face to everybody. I mean, he says it was just media types that are the only ones that are talking about breaking up Dame and CJ. I've talked to plenty of people around the league, players and executives, scouts and coaches, that have all said they need to break that up. It's not just media types. It's not just hashtag blog boys that are talking about this. This is a pretty common discussion anytime I mention the Blazers outside of the Portland market.
I mean, you got to think he Googles this stuff every once in a while, right? I mean,
he's more plugged in than just about anybody. So he knows what he's saying. It's just he has to stay on brand because that's the company line and that's what they have to say. Because and it's not just unique to him. Find me a single GM that's ever going to say that we made a mistake. Mm-hmm. That's not their job. But it doesn't make it. I think there are better ways to sell that than to basically say that nobody's ever said this, and that it's out of bounds to even mention that somebody has thought this idea. Like, how dare you? And that's how it came across. And I really, really didn't like it. Well,
so, a couple things to say on that. Like I said, he said, where are all these people who wanted sweeping changes 10 days ago? You're absolutely right. You've been talking about it for 3 years. Many people have been talking about it for 2 years. Even more people have been were talking about it all through this whole season. It's kind of shocking if he actually really was wondering where all these people were 10 days ago. I mean, the one thing that I could say that he might have possibly meant is, again, back to the ebb and flow nature of this podcast and of this year. There was a time in December where everybody thought everything was terrible, and then we had this 13-game winning streak. There was a time in December where people were talking about firing Stotts, and then there was a time where, he was in the Coach of the Year talk. So if Olshey was talking about just in the immediate 10 days before, of course, that would have been in the middle of them losing their last 4 out of 5 games.
4 out of 5 games, yeah.
If he said a month ago, that might have made sense, because a month ago, everybody was like on this, crest of feeling good about everything. And people were like, oh my gosh, maybe everything is all right after all. So like the only way that I could see that would have made sense for him to say is if he was just speaking about that really specific moment in time when everybody was on a high because the Blazers were on a 13-game winning streak. At that point, people were not complaining about making sweeping changes. At that point, people were like, oh, not everybody, but a lot of people were like, oh, well, maybe this could work after all.
The other point that I wanted to touch on here, because you kind of danced around it here, made it easier for me at least. Olshey said that I'm not going to make decisions, and this franchise is going to make decisions off the 4 games here, but instead the 82 games that we just saw. Okay, I can go with that. I can see that, how you would use that reasoning. But let's take that 13-game winning streak out of the season. This team's 36-33. How are you evaluating that team? A team that's at or just slightly above 500.
Or if they'd won half of the games in the winning streak. Don't just take out 13 games, but give them back, half of them, right?
So you're slightly above 500.
Yeah.
So you're what, 43-41 or 43-39?
You're in sweeping changes territory.
I mean, aren't you there? Like, and he said that they're basically in purgatory. Well, if they had that many wins, you know where they wouldn't be right now? Mm-hmm. The playoffs. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, which is it?
I mean, it's hard. I mean, because his job is to try and sell. You hate conflict
so much, so it's so hard for you to just like to dice this up. Yeah, I want to face plant in it. It's just.
I want to see where he's coming from, and I don't want to just make blanket statements about people who believe him, because on the one hand, it's his job to convince us of all these things. But on the other hand, it's our responsibility to be critical about the things that we're being told. Depending on how much time you have to devote to the Trailblazers, I devote way more time than I probably should to thinking about the Trailblazers. I have the luxury of being able to look critically at things like that. But a lot of people don't spend as much time on it as we do. And so they have to pick and choose, what's going to get in. But what I've seen over the last year is more and more people being skeptical about the direction of this team, even despite the fact that they've had a good year.
In the last 10 days, or
a lot of over the whole season, I think people are starting to really understand what you and others mean by Dame and CJ need help. Dame needs help, right? He's got role players around him, but you can't have a team of just role players.
There needs to be a bridge between the top level talent and the secondary, tertiary contributors. And right now, there's no bridge. I going into these playoffs, I thought Nurkic could be that guy. I mean, if you're looking, for me,
I did too.
If you're looking for the guy that I found to be the most disappointing, it was Nurkic.
Really?
And I think, and I mean, we didn't even touch on this. Nurkic's press conference was awkward. You could tell that it was just.
What about it? Did you think was awkward?
I want to be here,
for people
but
who didn't see it, maybe.
Yeah, so
describe
Nurkic said that hey, I like it here. I want to be here, but. I think he let a little bit of his emotion show, and I think that's Nurkic in general. He kind of wears it on his sleeve. Yeah. There was some uneasiness about his return. At least that was the take that I got from it, where a month ago it was unquestioned.
Yeah.
And I think that, if nothing else, shows you that changes are probably coming and needed. Because if the guy that was supposed to be the guy is unsure or uneasy about his position, where he sits, and the players on the team, Evan Turner and Maurice Harkless have mentioned this now, are saying that changes need to be made, whether schematically or play style or knowing their roles, then changes probably need to be made. I mean, other than a player coming out and saying, you need to make a move, which I think Damian Lillard did with Paul Allen a couple months ago. It doesn't get much more, straightforward than that. I think the next month to 6 weeks is going to be huge for Portland. Whether that doesn't necessarily mean they're making moves, it could be their lack of moves.
I'm afraid that they're not going to make any moves, and what I'm worried about is just stagnation and it just getting kind of being the same thing again. Damian had another gear this year. Do you think he's going to have another one? Is somebody going to have that big of a gear?
He's got probably 2 years of superlative Dame in him.
Yeah.
Just absolutely insane. Then he's going to get older, and the wear and tear of the NBA is going to fall. And I can't say it with certainty. I'm talking about, predictive styling here. Could he be like LeBron and get better with age? Sure. Was the likelihood of that very high? No. But
I can have a lot of fun watching Ed Davis and Al-Farouq Aminu, but that only goes so far.
That's the secondary rewards, though, right?
Right. They're like who you turn to when nothing else is going right. You just go, at least those guys are solid.
Yeah, and I hate to use this word, and Olshey used it himself, but obviously in a different manner than I'm using it right now, but the Blazers could find themselves very quickly in NBA purgatory. Whether they make moves that make things... And here's the thing. I've been a proponent for changes and making moves, but if you make the wrong moves... And I think that's a genuine fear, not just for the Blazers, but around the NBA. The status quo will always be the status quo. If you don't mess with it, then you know what you're getting. The unknown can be scary because of, things could actually get worse.
Yeah.
And making changes just for the sake of making changes is never going to work. And I don't think Neil O'Shea is going to do that just to satisfy some weird desire from the fan base or from players. They need to be the right changes. And that's why I think this is going to be a really strange, awkward, tense offseason. And it's probably going to happen pretty quick. So we'll have plenty to look forward to.
I hope it comes quickly, because I don't want July 1 seems like a really long ways away.
Oh God!
It'll be interesting to see what happens. A lot is going to happen between now and then. Other teams still have
other teams still need to get swept. Oh wait, nobody else is getting swept.
Not in this round. Blazers are going to have the distinction of being the only team that got swept in the first round.
Yeah, it's a bit rough.
We'll always be remembered for that, Dan. Find the positive silver lining.
Always remember your first. There you go. God.
Okay, we should be wrapping it up. Do you have other things that you want to say about the exit interviews?
No, outside of O'Shea, I think it was very standard, normal stuff. There was nothing groundbreaking. I think the most groundbreaking stuff honestly came from probably Nurkic. So you got obviously a little bit of honesty out of Evan Turner and Damian Lillard. Zach Collins looked good as far as being a professional and handling things the right way for media day or for exit interviews. Beyond that, it was pretty much same old, same old. It's kind of a bummer because the reason they do these interviews is because everybody's kind of skipping town. There's a few guys that are staying in town, which I think is cool.
It sounded like quite a few of them are. Ed is staying in town.
Yeah, Nurkic is going to go back to
Nurkic is
Bosnia.
staying in town.
Well, Nurkic is going to go back to Bosnia and do it and train with his guys like he did last year. But he's going to be spending time here as well. But obviously, the season's over. Nurkic is now a free agent. The Blazers themselves can't have contact with him until he's officially signed. So that's a thing.
They can't have. Is it just with their restricted free agents they can't have contact with, or
free agents in general?
Nobody. Like they can't talk to Ed now either.
Yep.
Because he's completely.
Once they have their final meetings, I believe they've got a little more time. I think they have the end of the NBA season, but a lot of these guys they take vacations.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I think it's so funny that they told Evan Turner to watch his weight.
maybe don't get quite as thick as you did last summer.
I know. I just love how he can move people around with that backside. I don't want him to lose too much of it. He needs to keep some of that.
You know what?
He moves guys around with that.
If there's one thing that Evan and Turner and I have in common is that I don't think either one of us is ever going to lose our backside. That's just, me, Evan Turner, and Yabusele. I think we're all going to be stuck in that particular situation until we're 6 feet under.
And Noah Vonleh, don't forget Noah.
And Noah Vonleh. He's also a member of the Badunkadunk Club.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this every podcast from here until you quit on me.
I'm done.
What is one thing that you could take away from this year that you enjoyed on the Blazers? About the Blazers.
You had to throw that
about the
that
Blazers season
in there.
Yeah, because I know that your boy Donovan Mitchell is still playing. Yeah. What's one thing that you could take away from this Blazer season that makes you happy?
I'm cheating because I used this one already for the write-up. Damian Lillard elevating his game. I didn't think he had this level. And again, I know it sounds crazy, considering what just happened in the playoffs.
Especially after the playoffs. It's so weird.
But he was so spectacular this season. The Trailblazers haven't had a player of his caliber, of his production, since Clyde. I mean, he's elevated himself. And this hurts me probably to say more than anything. I think he's past Brandon Roy in Blazers lore, in Blazers history. And I don't know if that's necessarily for me. I don't know if that's entirely true yet, but I think for the franchise and as a whole, and that's pretty cool. to say that
well, and he really has that
level.
possibility because of his longevity.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Brandon Royce is never going to have that. So more kids are going to remember Damian Lillard, growing up watching the Blazers and Damian Lillard.
How about you? Where do you fall here?
Okay, here's what I'm going to say this week, because I have a lot of things, and I could go on for weeks and weeks and weeks talking about things that I enjoyed about this season.
This is the only time we're doing this.
No way.
So get them in.
So this year, I don't know if you knew this, but this year, Yusuf Nurkic was 63 out of 67 on dunks. He had a 94% success rate on his dunks. I felt and loved and just took a little bit of happiness away from every one of those dunks.
The one dunk he missed, was that the one that Giannis got or the one that LeBron got?
He missed 4 dunks all year.
Oh, I thought you said he missed one. Okay. So
no, he missed 4 dunks.
Giannis
he was 63 of 67.
Okay, 63 of 67. I thought you said 66. Okay, so LeBron got one, Giannis got one, I think AD got one. I'm not sure about the other one. But that's a pretty decent list of guys to have your shot blocked by.
Right. I love dunks, and you know how rare it is compared to everything else that Nurkic dunks the ball. So I'm going to smile when I think about those dunks. I felt like he was hearing me directly in his ear screaming, "Dunk it!" right in his ear every time.
If that's not motivation, I don't know what is.
So that's my positive. That's my takeaway. All right. Well, Dan, you know what? Actually, there's one more positive takeaway from this year that I'm going to say. No, it's actually, I have learned so much about basketball this year thanks to you. This has been a real pleasure covering the season.
The lies.
And I'm not just being cheesy and pandering.
Lies.
I
pander all you want. I soak it up.
I've learned so much, and I appreciate the chance that I got to do this with you, that I've had to do this with you this year.
It's been a fun year.
I want to keep doing it.
It's been a fun
because there's a lot more to learn.
Oh, there's always more to learn. Lord knows I don't know it all. Oh my God, did I just say that out loud?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, secret's out,
it's going to go in my file.
Secret is out.
It's going to go in my file along with the screen cap that I took last night of you saying, "Tara, please save me."
Oh yeah, from the
was
DM.
The last game.
Yep. Yeah. Shout out to Snotty Drippin' for daring to say that I said that this team was going to be great and do well and be fantastic, and they were set. He knew better. No, it has been great, Tara, and it's going to be a interesting off season. So we'll have plenty of things to work through. And it's been fun having you rein me in from time to time.
Did my best.
Yeah, no, good luck. But no, I mean,
all right, well, Dan,
it's been a fun season, and hopefully we have many, many more to come.
Yeah. Well, with that, let's go ahead and wrap it up. You can find me.
I can't give you all the compliments in the world. That doesn't play. I have to hold it back.
Yeah, I know. I understand.
You were great and wonderful, and I have learned so much from you too, Tara.
Oh my God. Did you just get taken over by a poltergeist?
Yeah.
It was really
Sorry,
strange.
what'd you say?
It was like you said something really nice to me, and I don't know what happened there. But thank you anyway. All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter at TCBBiggs. You can email us blazersedgepod@gmail.com. We love getting email. Shout out to our friends Dan and Olivia, our number one emailers. Or you can email, or you can tweet us. Like I said, I'm at TCBBiggs. You can also tweet at Blazers Edge, and they'll pass it on to us. Dan, tell folks where they can find you and all of your numerous busy things and platforms that you do.
Woo! As always, you can find me on Twitter at Marang. Blazers Outsiders will continue through the off-season on Tuesdays and Thursdays off for the regular rotation. And that'll be at 7 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we will change the schedule around. We have some stuff coming up around free agency, around draft time, around summer league, and we've got some cool stuff planned for the summertime. So stay tuned if you aren't already. Follow Shane Brennan and Joe Simons. They're good dudes, and they've got some pretty insightful things to say. Other than that, I'm going to kind of lay lower for a little bit here, take a much needed break. Yeah, I think that's pretty much covers it all. So thank you, Tara. Thank you to everybody listening for a great year, even though it ended on a bit of a sour note. But hopefully we can kind of kickstart this thing pretty quick as we head into the off season. So thanks for listening, everybody, not just this week, but all season long. Remember, you can find us on iTunes at Almighty Baller Podcast Network and Radio Network, Stitcher, iTunes, everywhere else for your podcast needs. For Tara Bowen-Biggs, I'm Damian Marang. We'll catch you next time, guys.